guys, Handsome Dave here. So today's episode is episode 2 of the Problems of AAA Gaming, and this episode is about lack of originality. First and foremost, before I get started into this episode, I would also like to apologize. I understand this episode is a day or two late. I shot it originally on time, but unfortunately because there was construction outside of my building, it picked up on the sound and I just couldn't find a way to hide the sound. So I had to throw away everything that I filmed and then start fresh. So I do apologize for the lateness. I promise the next video will be on time on Wednesday. Also a quick development that I've decided that I think I'm going to do a comic book video every Wednesday and entitle it New Comic Book Day. Since new comic books do come out on Wednesday, I figured it would be a cool way to keep making sure that I release two a week. So without further ado, here we go. So lack of originality is a huge problem, not just with video games nowadays, but with also video content. Funny enough, I can actually be pegged as lack of originality because, I mean, how many review channels have you found on YouTube that do movies and comic books all the time? So I get it, my content is original, but it does make me happy. But when it stems from lack of originality for a video game, I'm actually referring to the same titles being released every year, just with minor tweaks, and remasters. So we'll get into the big one, the titles you see every year. You see your Call of Duty, you see your Battlefield, you see your Assassin's Creed, you see whatever big open sandbox Ubisoft is creating next. It's becoming predictable, and unfortunately it's so predictable you can almost predict the gameplay as well. Now this is a big problem with big companies too, because they understand, they know what the consumer wants and what the consumer likes and what's popular and trending right now, which again isn't a problem, because I mean it's like the old saying says, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But do we want the same thing over and over again? When I studied economics, I understood that the utility of a certain product when had in full is the value of it decreases. So when you first have a product, you get very excited about it. You enjoy it so much, but the more and more you have it, the less enjoyable it becomes. And the same can be said about the video games industry, and I'm a big stickler for this too. I'm not gonna lie, when Call of Duty first released Modern Warfare 4, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, I actually really enjoyed it because it was new, it was inventive, it was creative. But then as you went on, it kind of got repetitive. Sure, they'd add new things to it, they'd change the time period, they'd change the weapons you'd use, they'd tweak some mechanics, but all in all, it was the same game. I just paid $90 for the exact same game I had last year, just in a different time era. Could I justify that? And to add to it, it's just, again, it was full of DLC and everything, and it just, I don't know, it just wasn't original. I started to see over time that it just started lacking originality. Even still today, it has basically the same controls, just nothing new. I mean, sure, the time span is different, and sure, the missions are different, but same gameplay, same everything. I know, and having said that too, Assassin's Creed is the biggest problem with this. Now I get it, the new one, Origins, has been apparently huge and revolutionary. But, like, I get the new mechanics with the Eagle or the Hawk, pardon me, I haven't played a lot of it, but isn't that basically like detective mode, just more of a mobile detective mode from Arkham, or the Arkham games? Like, I get it, cool idea, but when you break it down, Assassin's Creed is just the same thing packaged over and over again in a different time span. So, I don't know, the lack of originality has been extended. Now granted, I get that these games are released to compete with a counterpart. For instance, Battlefield is competing with Call of Duty. And I get it, and it shows in those games, but they're also different at the same time. Like, for instance, Battlefield is a very open experience. It's large, it's huge, the maps are destructible, I get that. But how is it different than the previous Battlefields? I get it, that's the formula they've crafted, but it's still the same. Like, I get it, some minor things are tweaked, but when you see a new Battlefield title, yeah, sure, cool, it's gonna be in World War I. But is that enough? Like, game mechanics are the same, I get it. Weapons are certainly different. Again, time era is different, but it's the same game. Like, I don't know. Me being a child of the 90s, I'm used to games having a little bit more originality. Like, you can be a motorcycle cannibal trying to hijack tanks from 18-wheelers in the middle of the Mojave Desert, or you are exploring a fucked up version of Wonderland from a mental patient's perspective. You can even be a sprite inside of a messed up computer simulator. it was something different. It was something very different and something rich. Like, when I picked up a new game, it wasn't the same game, just copy and pasted in a different time frame. And I really enjoyed that. But now, with the whole lack of originality thing, there's another side to this as well. There's the remasters. Now, remasters are a nostalgia service, and I gotta say, I'm a huge fan of remasters. I greatly appreciate remasters, but at the same time, I look at it and it's just like, I already have this game. Now, there's obviously some variations, like there's Crash the Insane Trilogy or the Spyro remastered trilogy coming in. By the way, I will be purchasing Spyro the remastered trilogy, and I'm very, very excited for that. Those are my favorite PlayStation 1 games. But, having said that, I know that I am paying full service for a game that I've, one, already played, and two, is just a reskin of it. Now, granted, I get that these games were built from the ground up to capture that experience, to capture that, and kept everything the same, but enhanced that with HD graphics, and it's beautiful, it's stunning, and yes, all the masses are coming to play this. Even kids nowadays, it's being reintroduced to a different generation, which I love, because I know that, for instance, Spyro, they have Skylanders, which has Spyro in it, but that's so far from Spyro that it's almost a cheap knockoff, and it's awful. So to re-experience Spyro again is fantastic, but like, at the same time, this is just a nostalgia service, but they can slap on a full-price price tag and charge us for a game that we've already played. Now, for me, it's the nostalgia of cracking out the old systems, or going to a second-hand shop and finding a system that I once loved as a child. And that, for me, is the greatest feeling ever. Sure, I'm shelling out more money for the system, or maybe I still have that system, but for me, it's that whole experience all over again, you know? It's remembering, hey, I bought this system. I remember I saved up my allowance, and like, look, I found it for the price of a normal game nowadays. This is incredible. I remember when this was like $700. It's amazing, because then you can go to these shops and find all your favorite games from your childhood. Like, PlayStation is huge. Like, I love PlayStation 2 games. Like, they have the hugest library. Like, I honestly love having my PlayStation Slim and going into secondhand stores and seeing all my favorite games I used to play as a kid and a teenager even. It was amazing. But, you know, there's so many games that you think, hey, they should remaster this. But there's some that they really shouldn't. For instance, and I know I'm going to have a lot of people pissed off about this, but hear me out. My biggest problem with remasters is when there hasn't been enough time from its original release to the actual new release. So, The Last of Us is a big example of that. So if anyone played The Last of Us, if you haven't played The Last of Us, what the fuck are you doing with your life? Stop what you're doing. Grab a PlayStation 3 or PlayStation 4 and play The Last of Us. It's incredible. Some of the best story writing and gameplay in a game ever. I know everyone toots their own horn about The Last of Us, but seriously, with all due respect, it's worth it. It's fantastic. But the thing was, The Last of Us came out near the end of the PlayStation 3's life cycle, so it was already top-of-the-line graphics, enhanced gameplay, and just some of the most richest and deep storytelling I've ever played in a game. And within a couple of years of that being released, they transferred it over as almost a launch title for the PlayStation 4 that was known as The Last of Us Remastered. But what was really remastered? The PlayStation 4 launch graphics, I understand they were definitely high definition compared to the PlayStation 3, but really, was there a lot that had changed? I get it, you got the DLC packaged with it, so it was less of a purchase. But there wasn't anything new for me. Like, there wasn't anything that was really substantial, and literally, it was only like, what, a 3-4 year difference from when The Last of Us was on PS3 versus when it was on PS4. To me, that just seemed like a very quick money grab. The PlayStation 4 was released, and it only had a few launch titles, so hey, let's remaster The Last of Us and release it on PlayStation 4. That just seemed like a very, very empty money grab attempt, and I was a little disappointed with that. Granted, I wasn't disappointed with playing The Last of Us on PlayStation 4, but it still left me scratching my head as to why such a bold move. Create an original IP or a title to launch the system. Another point as well with big publishers is because of the lack of originality, there are still indie developers that are developing indie games for the marketplace for both console and as well as Steam. And honestly, these games are fantastic. Some of these have potential of being a complete AAA game without the huge corporations behind it. Now, for those of you who don't know, indie developers are developers that are their own one-offs. They usually have a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter campaign behind it to get the funds to produce their games, and then they're sold on Steam or they're sold on the PlayStation or Xbox networks to the consumers. And some of them are fantastic because there's no restrictions. They're not after money. They're focusing on producing a quality product that fans are going to love. They're making this product with the fan service in mind, as well as what the fans want from an actual game. You know, there's some of my favorite games are actually indie games. Like, I love Broforce. I love Lovers in a Dangerous Space Time or something like that. You know, like there's so many indie games out there that are fantastic. They're rich, they're vibrant, they're beautiful. They can have fun. That's what a video game is. It's supposed to be fun. And that's fantastic to see that again, getting back to those classic days where it was like, hey, let's have fun with this video game. You want a video game where it's DDR and dungeon crawling at the same time? There you go. By the way, that is an actual game, and it is so much fun. I think it's called Dance of the Necro Dancers or something. It is amazing. Or sorry, Adventures of the Necro Dancer. It is amazing. It's on PlayStation Network. I highly recommend it. By the way, PlayStation Network does not endorse this channel at all. If I need to clarify that. But, you know, like, there's also games like Day of the Tentacle and I Am Toast. Like, these are games that are not afraid to be silly because they have nothing to lose. They want to develop something that is fun, completely different than you're going to find in an EB Games, and doesn't cost you an arm and a leg. They are literally developing these games with the players in mind. And that's fantastic. You know, some of these games even have multiplayer too, so if friends of yours download it and you have it as well, you can play these games together, and that's what makes it even better. And another thing too that got lost in translation, especially with online multiplayer, is I miss sitting around on a couch with 4 friends playing games. That's what these indie games have also drafted. They realize that the purpose of these games is to also bring back nostalgic feelings. So if you want to play a game that has 2D 8-bit graphics, they have it. You want to play a side-scrolling platformer? Well, you can play as Robocop. Yes, I'm talking about Broforce. Download that game. You fucking need to play it. Do it. It's amazing. Like, you know, they went and did it. They went and made a game like this. And it's just fantastic to see that these indie developers have broken away from basically the conglomerate to make something for the gamers that are crying out for something more. And it's beautiful to see. Now, one thing that is really... And if you haven't picked up from what I've been talking about, is it's becoming a indie developers versus a AAA market. You know, it's fantastic to see because over time people are getting sick of those pay restrictions. Now, granted, indie games sometimes have pay restrictions. They have to make money as well, not just off the games, but off of DLC content or pre-orders or anything. And that's fine. That's a good structure, but at the same time, it doesn't cost you an arm and an leg like it would for AAA games. And a lot of it is sometimes solely cosmetic. It's not huge that you need it, but it's still fun. But whereas AAA games, they're starting to actually absorb some of these indie developers into them and taking away that fun. So unfortunately, it's kind of a small market, and it's kind of a dwindling market, yet growing market at the same time. It's definitely a very lively market. So a lot of people have looked at it and asked, are indie developers the future for gaming? I, for one, would like to think so, because I am an artist. I'm again, still working on a comic book, and I still paint. I love seeing independent work like this. It is literally a mom-and-pop shop, but a video game. And I love seeing indie developers fly. I love seeing when I see an indie developed game in the same category as a AAA game, and it wins an award over a AAA game. That I honestly love. Now, I get it. There are some categories where it's strictly just for indie games. But I've seen it happen time and time again where a beautifully made indie game beats out the best AAA expensive-ass game you will find. And it is honestly the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It makes me feel like there is hope, again, as an artist and as a creative mind, that people want to see that independent creativeness as opposed to a product developed by a big conglomerate where they just want to make a quick dollar. And honestly, as much as I want to see this happen, I want to see the future for indie games. I understand with these big companies, it's going to be very, very hard and a very long time before we actually see a fully developed indie market overtake a AAA gaming market. And that's fine. I will gladly wait, and I will gladly chip in to help that out. But will we see it in our lifetime? Maybe not, but hopefully it'll happen. So there you go, guys. That is my problem with lack of originality and the problems with AAA Gaming Episode 2. There is one more episode in this series, and it will be coming out next Wednesday. I promise, guys, there won't be another delay in this. And other than that, guys, love each other and stay handsome.